Hey, we've got a problem here.
What did you do?
Nothing. I stirred the tanks.
Whoa. Hey.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
For some time, there's been a lot of elements, within American culture that have been trying to tear down and to destroy our icons, our legends, our legacies, the characters and stories that are supposed to inspire us, to make us want to become better than ourselves. Obviously, the original stories would have come from religion. That's certainly under attack on many fronts. But it's certainly for quite a while been moving over into our own mythos. Obviously, comic books are a big part of mythos within Western culture. It's a worldwide phenomenon now, but really in Western culture where it created, these are our mythical tales. So this is the story of Superman is our Odyssey, some would say, or the Dark Knight Returns could say, is. You could equate it to something like the story of Troy. It's a mythos being handed down, and you can learn things from comics. I believe Kevin Smith might fall into the fetal position and cry like a baby talking about the morals and lessons that he learned from comics. Me personally, I think that comic books do have a lot of lessons, a lot of morality to learn from them. I think that they should probably be in addition to whatever you learn at home from your parents, as something to help round you out or maybe reinforce the things that you've learned. Probably shouldn't be held in quite the esteem that Kevin Smith does. He almost holds comic book stories and things like is like biblical tales. I don't go that far, but I do think they're very helpful. And they're certainly being dragged down. Just recently here on the channel, I talked to Eric Green about whether creators nowadays within the comic book industry are almost, embarrassed, reluctant to write stories about Captain America or a character like Superman, aspirational heroes that represent things that might just offend their sensibilities. Obviously, cultures change, populations change over time, and there's definitely a push towards like moral relativism. No one's ever really done anything wrong, They did what they did and you did what you did, and you can't really judge people. And if that's the way you want to look at life, you can't have somebody or a character or a legacy or a mythos out there like a Superman or a Captain America, or even some of the older legends within American culture. We've seen recently an attack on Dr. Zeus. Dr. Zeus is canceled. He's been outlawed. It's literally illegal to trade in Dr. Seuss, some Dr. Seuss, in certain commerce sites in America. How strange is that? Corporate-led censorship. And it's very much accepted, and not only accepted among certain parts of the populations, it's championed. It's looked upon as something great. So when you have these characters and these legacies, you can't just destroy a Superman in one day. You have to do it over time. So maybe we have Superman renounce his American citizenship. America's not what we thought it was. It's no longer the beacon of light in the world. Superman used to represent American values. He needs to, renounce his citizenship and let people know, he no longer identifies with American values. Okay. It's just a little thing. It's nothing to be it's no big deal. Why get your panties in a bunch? Wes, why get your panties in a bunch? It's no big deal. You're overreacting. Of course I am. Of course, we're all overreacting. We just can't take a joke or a little bit of change, just a little bit of change. Of course, what's next? Well, he can no longer represent truth, justice, and the American way. Oh, that's offensive. Now, truth and justice, obviously he can represent that, but let's maybe every once in a while, an ancillary character might be able to refer to the American way when talking about Superman in respect of his legacy. But Superman himself certainly can't represent that, can't say that he represents that. And none of the heroes around him will ever insinuate that that's what Superman represents. But Wes, it's a little change. We're modernizing the character. People can't relate to Superman anymore. Stop getting your panties in a bunch. Come on, Wes. And anyone else that has any modicum of reaction to a hero that they looked up to maybe their whole life being changed for the worse in their eyes. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is subjective. And I'm giving you my opinion on what I just read in Superman Red and Blue, the new anthology series from DC Comics. Not that long ago, in the very first issue of the other history of the DC Universe, John Ridley wrote a Black Lightning story. And it's heavily insinuated that Superman only protected the white citizens of Metropolis and was unwilling to go and protect the people in nearby communities if they were not white. Because Superman's, of course he's a racist. He can only represent white people. You know, he could never just be a symbol of hope for everybody. He's got a skin tone. That implies something. That implies on who he's willing to protect. Certainly never in keeping with the legacy of the character, or certainly what the creators intended. Two Jewish men. The allegory of Superman is really the allegory or the tale of a refugee looking for a place to call home that would accept him and that would embrace him. And he embraced, obviously, America back, being raised by the Kents. And he ended up growing up and championing the values of America. But, of course, looking back on it, looking back on hindsight, if he was championing the values of America, obviously he was racist. He would have never helped those brown kids on the other side of the tracks. Superman's, he's fallible, just like all of us. Of course he would be like that. Any superhero from that era would have to be racist. And I made a video about that. There will be one in the link. There should be something, if it's probably already come up by now, but I'll give you a little link to that if you want to see what I thought about John Ridley's The Other History of the DC Universe in respect to Superman. That's part of it. I had a much bigger narrative and issues with that comic book personally. So today we get Superman Red and Blue, and we get the further erosion of Superman's legacy. Now this time he doesn't do anything crazy. I remember I was talking to Joe. The other day, and I said, this DC Pride #1, I feel like it's pandering, and it's nothing to get upset about. I was like, you know what would upset me, Joe? Is if in the Alan Scott story, Alan Scott comes out to Superman, and Superman tells him unequivocally, you have been removed from the Justice Society of America. You are not allowed to be a superhero in America anymore because gays aren't allowed to be superheroes. That would be offensive. That would change the fabric of a character, and that would get me pissed. Or, as some of you may say, get my panties in a bunch. But that's not what DC Pride #1 is going to be, or that's not what I perceive it's going to be. So it's hard for me to get worked up about something like that. But it's a little bit easier. It doesn't go quite that far. It's certainly not Superman going quite that far, but it is John Ridley bringing Superman down to size, and showing, modernizing the character. He's no longer an aspirational hero. You can't relate to an aspirational hero. Wes can't relate to an aspirational hero. No one can, because they're so perfect. They're a character you're supposed to aspire to. And that's problematic in today's society. No one's ever done anything wrong. If somebody went and robbed a bank, it wasn't really their fault. They were in circumstances. And having a character like Superman that embodies truth, justice, and the American way out there, that's problematic. You can't have a character like that. We need to humanize. We need to bring him down to size. So we learn through this story that Superman, Clark Kent, is going to a fictional country that used to be part of the Russian bloc, but is now westernized and is doing quite well. And he's got sweaty palms. He's nervous. He hasn't had sweaty palms since he moved Earth back to its axis. I think he moved it 13 meters. And we learned, and the first thing that's interesting is in this story, essentially, Superman admits that during the Cold War, when he was in this Soviet country, saving people from a concentration camp or some type of work camp, internment camp, something of that nature, that he was wrong. This is what Clark Kent's inner monologue has to say about the moment before he gets in to what happened to him. I really thought that I was Superman, that nothing could affect me, no forces of nature, not the laws of nations. When I saw an emergency, never mind that I had no authority to enter Lubania, I was going to do what was right. I didn't care about Cold Wars or international borders. Why should I? I'm Superman. We're in a fictional universe. In the fictional universe, the aspirational hero doesn't care about borders. He doesn't care about international laws. He only cares about truth, justice, American way. He only cares about saving people. But here in Clark Kent's inner monologue, he's admitting that he broke the law. He should never have been there in the first place. He shouldn't have been trying to save those people in a freaking work camp or an internment camp. What was he thinking? It's like America going there and invading the country. He was the symbol of America at the time. What a bastard. What a piece of shit that Superman was. And good on you, Clark Kent, for recognizing your privilege and checking yourself and understanding that you never should have been saving those people in the first place. You had no right to be there. Those people were legally detained and being killed, under the... It's hard to even pretend this stuff, but this is what that's implying. Okay, you're like, Wes, you're getting your panties in a bunch about nothing. Well, if this was all of it, yes, I agree. This is just a part of it. This is, we're laying the foundation until we get through the real stuff. The next step, we find out while he was in Lubania, they had manufactured synthetic kryptonite, something we've heard about within the pages of DC Comics lately. Apparently, this happened all the way back in the 70s or 80s, during the height of the Cold War. And Superman, as he was trying to save these people, was affected by synthetic kryptonite. He was powered down to nothing, and he was held against his will and tortured. Held for 8 months. Superman was no longer a hero, no longer out there saving people, brought down to what he should have been all along, just a man with no powers that couldn't save anybody, let alone himself. Got to chip away at that legacy. Got to bring that aspirational hero down to size. See, he's just like you or me. Never mind the fact that there are heroic archetypes for a reason. You have an aspirational hero, or some might call it a classical hero. And in the case of Superman or Captain America, I would say that there are traces of an epic hero in there as well, as in the tales of their heroism over time grow, and their legacy becomes bigger in scale, and it comes to mean something and symbolize something of the culture that it represents. That is what Superman is. Being in an internment camp or being held against his will and being tortured does not fit that legacy. It does not support that type of heroic archetype. But that type of heroic archetype, especially one that might symbolize something as terrible, as dastardly as America and the American legacy, you got to bring it down. Now, being held against your will and having bad things happen to you, certainly there are heroes that have gone through things of that nature, right? There are different heroic archetypes. There's the tragic hero, something that, maybe somebody like Mr. Miracle certainly has experienced through his time as a hero. Tragic hero, held against his will, traded essentially to Darkseid, and tortured, essentially his entire life on Apocalypse. A different type of hero, overcoming the tragedy, and maybe one day seeing the light. You have a character like Punisher. Certainly, he was born in war. The hero's origin was in the Vietnam War. I haven't read all Punisher. I imagine there's a tale or two where he was captured and held against his will and possibly tortured. Falls in line with the hero archetype of Punisher. But you or I would never want to be the Punisher. I would never want to be so hell-bent on vengeance I was out murdering people, whether they deserved it or not. I wouldn't want to be Batman. You're not supposed to aspire to be Batman, to where you're so hell-bent on vengeance, you can't let go of that one moment in your life that you're out there every single night, putting your life at risk, trying to make something right that can never be right. Whereas you have Superman, well-adjusted. He has his powers, but he's able to manage his life. He goes out and saves everybody. This idea that he's the what did John Ridley call him? The Anglo-Saxon Kryptonian, because he could only represent Anglo-Saxon values, even though he is created by Jewish creators to represent refugees in a time when Jewish disbursement was pretty bad. Obviously, things got worse after the creation of Superman. I'm not going to really go into all those details right now. But to the creators of Superman, he meant something completely different than what he does to John Ridley. But it's John Ridley's job to tear that down. He's no longer supposed to mean what he was originally intended to mean. We have to tear him down, but to bring him back down to size. They've been doing it year over year over year. And finally, we get this wonderful page of Superman being held on his knees with his head on a stool. The only thing I'm thankful here is that they didn't do what I assumed that they were going to do, Superman Clark Kent on a television for propaganda reasons, espousing anti-American rhetoric. I'm sure it's certainly hinted at that he did that. And of course, the whole time, they say every single day that he was tortured and he was beaten. I imagine he had things put underneath his fingernails, and perhaps he was hung up by ceiling fans and things like that nature. We've heard about people being tortured while they're being essentially prisoner of war in the past. There's this character, Nikolai Kozlov, and he watches him being tortured every day for 8 months. Superman has to look him in the eye. Superman finally is let go, and he gets to go back to being a hero. Never gets retribution on Kozlov. Nothing he could ever do about it. And the reason that he is all sweaty palmed and nervous is because he's going to interview Kozlov. And he wants to know if he feels bad for the crimes that he committed. And of course he doesn't and all that. But that's not what this story is about. This story isn't about Superman confronting this tragedy that happened to him in his past life. This is about breaking Superman down. It's about breaking the legacy down. It's so you or I, when we see Superman, not really you or I, because likely if you're a viewer of this channel, you've been reading comics for a while, but the next generation, when they look at Superman, they no longer see that aspirational hero, that character to aspire to. They can see all those flaws, those man-made flaws from the likes of John Ridley and others that they have put into Superman. Because you can't have a character that operates like this. He means too much to the fabric and to the mythos of what America represented when he was created and through a large portion of his existence. And that's all got to be washed away. And that's what this is. It's a step-by-step process of taking all these things away, destroying legacies, taking away as aspirational heroes. You shouldn't aspire to be anyone but your neighbor. You shouldn't want to be better than other people around you. You shouldn't want to do the right thing when there's no reason other than you knowing what the right thing to do. We all do that, right? It's more relativism. You never did anything wrong. Things just happen. And that's what they want you to that's what they want to wipe those things away from these heroes. They've been doing it for a very long time, piece by piece. And of course, you're just getting your panties in a bunch, Wes. That's not what he's trying to do here at all. Listen, if you want to have your blinders on and not realize and see what's happening right in front of your face, that's up to you. But it's happening, and it's happening all over the landscape. It's not just comic heroes. It's literary heroes. It's heroes in great Americans in other countries, people that have had enormous influence throughout time, all being brought down to size, all their legacies tarnished. We have to remove all of that because that reminds people that in another time things might have been better, that the America of yesterday or yesteryear might have been healthier than what we are now, that maybe turning back the clock could do some people some good. That's not good. No, we got to keep on this road. We got to tear all of our heroes down. You can't say that you can appreciate the legacy of some people and understand because they are human. Not talking about Superman, that they had flaws. You can't do that. You can only think about their flaws. And in this case, we got to bring Superman down to size. He was depowered and tortured for 8 months. He could do nothing about it. He's not an aspirational hero. He's not somebody that would go out there and when he went to another country to help people that were basically in prison and being, potentially murdered in internment camps, he was wrong. He never should have crossed that border. And of course, because it is modern society. On the last coup de grace from John Ridley, he's talking about his meeting with Kozlov in his inner monologue. Same as everywhere. The city was full of people who lived well because of others who were exploited. Okay. Kozlov thrived in the past because few people cared to stand against him. Ironically, his only crime now was capitalism. How would anyone care how he made his money? Capitalism bad, man. Capitalism bad. Listen, if this doesn't bother you, fine. But don't tell me, don't even try and paint the picture. Oh, that's not what he's trying to do. I know exactly what he's trying to do. I know exactly what these creators are doing. They've been doing it for decades now. They're just more blatant about it. And so many people are willing to turn a blind eye. Oh, that's not what that. That's not that. Yes, it is. It's happening every single day. You are not allowed to have an aspirational hero unless it's in the mold of what other people, when I say other people, I'm talking about other groups. You have to be a part of the group. You have to be a part of the hive. You can't think that America was ever good. You have to know that when Superman crossed that border, he was wrong and he was punished for it. 8 years or 8 months being tortured in front of his oppressor, and he could do nothing about it. That's just the way it is. There you go. That's what I got to say about Superman Red and Blue and John Ridley's apparent distaste for the character. Started in the other history of the DC universe and continues on here. Can't wait till he writes Superman again. Maybe he can make him a rapist or something. That would be really nice.